All right. Well, I already did the introduction earlier, but I'll say it again I won't mess this one up. But we have Todd Moses from Imaginovation, and he's talking specifically about their new product, Deep Meetings, which is super cool. I'm really interested in the product itself, but I'm not going to do it justice, so I'll let Todd talk all about it, and we're going to help them figure out how to make it work.
Okay, so I'm Todd Moses. I'm with Imaginovation, and this is our first product called Deep Meetings, and it's come about based upon us wanting to improve how we communicate internally and with our clients. And so here's what marketing came up with: to enhance and evolve business communication through the use of emerging technology. But what I like even better is that we augment human communication through the use of deep learning. And so all of this came about in that we, as a company, did custom software. We still do it. And when we meet with clients, we meet with clients for 3 hours, 4 hours as initial meetings. And in that, we have project managers in there. We have software engineers in there. We have designers in there. We have all these people taking notes. And regardless of how much we communicate with them, how much time we spend with them, how many notes we take, we always seem to forget something or leave something out. And it's a two-way street, both sides do. In addition, internally, we have a lot of meetings. And so we have to meet with various teams, and those teams may or may not be meeting with the client, and then we have to, meet together, and there's leadership meetings, and there's development meetings, and there's all these things. And so the question's raised, how effective or important are these meetings? Do we really need them? And so being engineers, we wanted to quantify that. We can't just say yes or no. We wanted to quantify it. And so those are the seeds, if you will, the pieces that brought about this product. And one of the difficulties in developing this, and part of the problem we're trying to solve, is with human speech itself. First thing, it's hard to understand intent. And these are things that we make a lot of assumptions about, but to actually know someone else's intent is very difficult unless you know them well. It's easy to get off topic, hard to maintain focus. Everyone's been in a meeting where someone's mentioned a restaurant or something they enjoy, and then the other people in the meeting are going to jump right into that. And, oh yeah, I love that place. Oh, isn't it so good? And then they go off on these tangents and waste time. Not that some of that is good. Some of that is good. That some of that's rapport building. Some of that is other things. But it can, as far as business communication is concerned, it can get out of hand. Now, this one is especially important. And when I talked to guys that were in sales and marketing, they were very interested in this, and that the sentiment. And so this is emotional, like if people are angry or sad or they're calm, what have you. There's multiple areas of this. We just use the smiley faces, but we have a number behind that. And that, especially with people with other cultures and in a sales situation, you could talk to them and not realize that you just offended them, and they would be polite and go through an entire sales presentation, maybe even spend an hour with you. Thank you for your time, walk out the door, and you never hear from them again, and you're sitting there wondering what went wrong. Now, with deep meetings, we figured out, we gauge the sentiment so that using the machine can tell you, whoa, every time I tell this joke, or every time I say this phrase, their sentiment starts dropping. Yeah, so the other thing here, and this is where I get into the quantification, is it's almost impossible to gauge the effectiveness of a conversation, especially in a meeting. And it's really, that's the crux of it, is how effective is this meeting as far as our initial goals and even our business objectives. So if it's a sales meeting, we have a desired outcome of that. And so, and you say, well, that's pretty simple. If they buy, that was a good sales meeting. Well, maybe not. But internally, it gets even worse. Was it a good idea to bring your entire development team in and talk to them for an hour when they have to deliver in 4? Was that, or would it have been better just to let them go off on their own? It may have been they weren't doing what they needed, or they didn't quite understand something, and now the clarification has made it where it only take them 30 minutes to finish, but it may be you just took a lot of their development time away. And so that's very important. We all know this one. Participation's never equal. You go to meetings and you realize that there are some people who talk the entire time. They just want to talk, and they want to talk, and they want to talk. And then you have other people in the meetings who just want to sit there, and they're not going to talk, and they're not going to participate. And so really it comes down to the question of, is it important to have certain people in the meeting? You might find that of people who don't participate in meetings, that's not the way for them to communicate. They just don't like that. And it is probably hurting them in other areas of productivity. And so it'd be better not to bring them in certain meetings. And again, with this product, we give you results. We don't tell you what to do with them, so you can make those management decisions on your own. But we all know participation's never equal. So in order to start, we did something groundbreaking. And that is, we recorded the conversation. That's the first step. Now, in recording the conversation, we were trying to mimic, well, what do athletes do? What do top performers do? And they record their practice sessions. They record their performances, and they watch them over and over again. Well, we're not going to watch over and over again our business meetings. Probably not. That's a far stretch. So we have the machine record them and convert them for us using deep learning into a textual transcript. And in the textual transcript, we have highlight the keywords and some other things that I'll get into in a moment. But this is the start of it, and this is put into a searchable system, so you can search by certain keywords and pull up the meetings for that. You can search by date and other things. The big thing here that we start with is topics. And so in a management setting, you can go back through meetings and you can see what topics were discussed in the meeting and what % of time was spent on those topics. I don't know what this meeting was, skating, robotics, databases. Who knows what they were talking about? That seems a little odd. But anyway, somebody was talking about skating robots. And that gives the topics. And the reason this is important is, as a manager, you can see if we were having a product discussion, and then we saw that 20% of the time was spent on fishing, and the other 10% was about the new restaurant that opened up down the street from the office, that wasn't a good use of time. And so we can make our own changes that need to be made in order to facilitate improved use of time. So when the meeting's over, we give you this thing here. And we give you the MP3. We give you the start time, end time, and from that we calculate the total time of the meeting. So in management, you can look at how long this meeting was, and you can look at the general sentiment of the meeting. That means everybody was kind of flat line. Everyone's okay, nothing bad, nothing great. But we also do the sentiment on a per turn basis. And I'll get to that in a moment. With the effectiveness score. And this is where we quantify, was this meeting effective? And to do this, we take a game theory algorithm based on continuous game theory. But instead of infinite turns, we give n turns, and that n is the number of total turns from the meeting we calculate at the end. And so on a per turn basis, we start calculating this. And it's based upon the topics. And so it's really a measure of how on topic you were. And using game theory, what we're trying to do is turn each time someone speaks into their turn of a game. So was their turn better at winning that game, or was it worse? And winning the game in this instance is staying on topic and achieving the objectives of the meeting. And so as we do this, we're also getting the sentiment per turn, we're getting everything per turn, and at the end of the meeting, we give you the averages of that, but you can still go back and look at the per turn. So if something was awry, like if this obviously hasn't been run, but you know, if your effectiveness score was 50% in a meeting, and it continues to be so, then you know there's some problem there, and you can look deeper and see what people were the culprits of that were in that meeting. Speaker participation. So we want to record this. We want to know who's participating and who's not. And it's not necessarily a bad thing either way. Again, we give you the information, let you decide what to do with it. And so we grab that from the text of who's did what. And that starts with the deep learning and pulling that from actual different voices, different audio channels. And that's actually one of the most difficult things to get. So when we had all this originally, it was probably about a year ago, and the development team's like, we got it. I had looked over it. I'm like, yes, we have this. This is perfect. This is awesome. And so our CEO gave me, he's a big soccer fan, he gave me a transcript from the World Cup. And not a transcript, but the audio file. And so I played this audio file for deep meetings. And it was 3 guys talking. And these 3 guys were talking about the game. And so I put it through, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be excellent. And it got the topics of baseball, football, lacrosse. I mean, every sport we had in the training data, it pulled as a potential topic. And it was very confused because it couldn't very well assign which one of these it was. So I had to go back and look, and it turns out that when we speak, we make assumptions of the context. We don't actually say the context we're speaking in. If I said, who won the game last night? And we're here in North Carolina, and you know it's basketball season, you have a pretty good idea of what game I was talking about. If you're into basketball, you know exactly what game I was talking about. But if you were to hear that on a meeting, and maybe you're on a conference call and you're in Australia and you hear, well, how was the game last night? You're not going to know what game we're talking about because we're assuming a lot of the context. And it turns out this is throughout everything with human speech. When people talk, they assume the context. And so this is one of our biggest challenges. So to solve this problem, we thought, okay, let's put athletes' names, because in that World Cup transcript, they just mentioned a bunch of names. They mentioned a ball, and that was really it. That was our only clues. So, you know, well, why don't we just put teams and players' names and all this stuff and train it on this data? And so if you had Jordan, you had the Cavaliers, what would that be? Well, yeah, basketball. Yeah. However, it could also be history. And so that doesn't work. Now, yeah, so what we've done is we figured out this process called windows of context. And the window is a time and location. And based upon the time and location, the context changes. And that's the only way for topics to fully work. And no one else is doing this. This is something we're about to implement. It's not in the product yet. We're still doing the keywords. And so our topics are probably 90% at the moment, but they're still better than Watson. And we've got that. Now, one of the things we wanted to do, if you see the other guy with a beard, if you want one of these cards to give you access to the system for free, you can try it out and give us some feedback. That would be great. And then other than that, questions? Yes, sir.
Okay. So is this like video and audio? Are you guys providing conferencing or are you recording conferences? And I ask that because I've been on more conferences than I care to remember where I cannot hear 90% of the people on the other side of the call, let alone recording it for a computer to process.
Yes, thank you. I should have mentioned that. So it starts with, well, it can start 2 ways. We're integrated with a larger company, and they have it in some of the teleconferencing hardware you buy. We're integrated into that. However, we have a SIP connection and a phone number. So we do provide a phone number, and you can do a conference bridge and get in and have your conference calls. Our do an in-person meeting by dialing the number to have the system listen in as a participant. But you can use it with like Zoom and like all your other conference solutions as well with that SIP
So you dial
connection.
you in as another participant?
Yeah, you could dial the computer in.
It just like pops up and everybody sees it.
Question in the back.
What about confidentiality? You know what I'm saying? Will you let people know this thing is being recorded in a company? That's what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And right now we're putting that on the customer, the end user, to tell. So we don't have a thing that states, yes, we're recording you. It's on that owner of the system, the person with the license to use it, it's on them to do that. So they are supposed to tell you, but it's actually dependent on certain state laws. In some states, they don't have to tell you at all.
Question
Okay.
here.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay, the notion of Big Brother comes to mind. And just the fact that, management gets a hold of this, and they can start analyzing meetings and and start judging people based off of things that, the science on this is probably not, it's still new. You start making decisions about stuff that you may not even know that you're making the right decision about. And, it kind of gets back to how management started the grinding capitalism, time and motion studies that, started focusing in on people, and then maybe expecting, well, you didn't have a good meeting this time, here's things you need to do to have a better meeting the next time. What would you say about that?
No, you're right. We don't know how this is going to be used everywhere. We know that this technology and even taking it to new levels is what people in this industry want to do. As far as, Big Brother. So all that's in there is the recording of your voice and analysis of your participation in the meeting with various metrics. It's not nearly as invasive as doing a Google search. So, unless you're talking about something sensitive or you said something you don't want ever repeated, then you're not, there shouldn't be a problem there. Now, what does management do with this data? It depends on management and how well they do it. Now, I would, with my team, is I would just say if someone's not participating well in meetings, they're not going to be in those meetings, because I would rather use them in something else. However, it depends on role and a bunch of other things. So I don't think I'm quite qualified to answer all of that.
Okay. Eric has a question in the back.
Are you familiar with Voicera? Do you know Voicera?
It sounds familiar, but I'm not familiar.
They're doing a very similar thing. I'm not educated enough to say what the differences are, but I would look into Voicera. I know a company that's doing this with facial recognition too, and they're trying to discern like the engagement of audiences, and like I'm interested in using it for like our sales conversations and figuring out what resonates and stuff like that. Would you be interested in meeting those people and talking about collaboration on that?
Oh, absolutely. That would be great.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely do that. And the last thing is about I think that's a very valid
Yeah.
concern, but I think it's also with all technology, like when now we have tracking and everything, we just have to get comfortable with it. And I love the full transparency of this and all the new technology that's happening. We just have to adapt and become comfortable with it and have an understanding. I think that we know way more information and we need to be sharing more as a community, I think, too. But, yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, 2 more questions right here.
Sure. So I work for a 100% remote company with like 500 employees. So the bullet points you had up there of like challenges in meetings is very real.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, have you considered the remote space as a primary customer, and how do you compete with people like Zoom who already kind of own the remote space and are building these tools into their product?
Yes. So when I originally spoke about this product about 8 months ago, a larger company that is Zoom's major competitor actually wanted to buy our technology. And it turns out they just want to license it instead. So we're already integrated into those type of systems. Not Zoom itself. We can work with Zoom, but other technologies that are very similar. And that list is going to expand. But yeah, they are working on that, but they don't have it quite yet. And so when a company, like with any startup, they build something, the goal of that usually is to become acquired, to have some kind of exit. And so you turn your company is some kind of R&D phase, really. And to some degree, we've done that, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Okay, we're running out of time, but I want to give Frank, you get the last question.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the marketing statement that you had at the very beginning. I'm just curious, who is the target audience? Because that sounded, I don't know quite who you would be reaching for that statement.
Yeah, and I don't know if there was one. I didn't create that. Our marketing guys did. And so that's what it came about when engineering explains to marketing what a new product that no one's ever seen does. I'm sure it will change.
Well, Frank just happens to be a marketing expert, so
Oh, excellent.
I think he'd like to work with your marketing guy.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to community announcements.